mediaparty tiene el mejor nombre que he visto en mi vida, porque realmente es una fiesta. Realmente una fiesta de medios, de gente que le gusta innovar dentro del periodismo.
It's a great party across Latin America, and it helps us bring together technology and journalism, which is something that we believe in.
I think it's been great. I've already had like a dozen conversations with people that I wouldn't have had anyplace else.
Bienvenidos al segundo día de la novena edición de la mediaparty, este año en pijama. Mi nombre es Gino, Cingolani, Trucco. Estamos súper contentos de que estén acá. Les queremos agradecer a todos los que están conectados, a todos los que se sumaron ayer. Realmente un montón de gente. Tuvimos actividades maravillosas, tuvimos a Lisa Gibbs de Associated Press dando una keynote maravillosa sobre experimentos con inteligencia artificial en periodismo que generó muchísimo debate. Tuvimos a Charo Enríquez de New York Times hablando sobre innovación en redacciones. Tuvimos a Jeff Jarvis, a nuestro profe, ¿sí? Que siempre es súper iluminador hablando de cómo los periodistas pueden aprender de los científicos y cómo comunicar, ¿sí? Queremos agradecer un montón a todos los speakers y a todos los que se sumaron ayer. Queremos agradecer también a nuestros sponsors, por supuesto, a Facebook Journalism Project y a Google News Initiative. Les contamos que ayer tuvimos, en realidad hoy en el SCED hay 1.800 personas inscritas, ¿sí? Es gigante, es masiva la cantidad de gente que está participando de la mediaparty este año. Realmente estamos muy contentos. Fue súper difícil, fue un desafío increíble organizar esta conferencia de manera totalmente remota, ¿sí? Obviamente extrañamos un montón de las cosas que todos ustedes seguro extrañan ahí desde su casa, el patio de Conex, charlar con la gente, tener a los speakers cara a cara, pero la verdad es que hicimos un esfuerzo gigante en poder reproducir esa lógica en este evento, ¿sí? En estos Zooms, en estos Spatial Chats, en estas conversaciones que se están dando, y creemos que realmente todos la están pasando muy bien, tuvimos muy buen feedback. Ayer tuvimos picos de 500 personas conectadas en nuestras keynotes, ¿sí? Workshops con 100 personas o más de 100 personas, gente yéndose a ver los workshops a través de nuestros streamings, con lo cual, digamos, realmente estamos súper contentos con la recepción que estamos teniendo, ¿sí? Importante, Hacker Buenos Aires, en Twitter y en Instagram, pueden seguir ahí todas las novedades, todo el real time, todas las cosas que estamos haciendo. Bueno, voy a sacarme el barbijo así, a mí me gusta el barbijo, pero bueno, así me escuchan mejor. Quiero contarles que tenemos un espacio, ¿sí? que bueno, un poco esta lógica de reproducir el patio de Conex. Realmente yo no le tenía mucha fe, pero salió súper bien ayer. Si es el Spatial Chat, pueden buscarlo en spatial.chat/s/mediaparty. Hoy vamos a hacer un experimento medio raro en el Spatial Chat. Vamos a tratar de reproducir un poco la lógica de la mediaferia, con lo cual, si alguno de ustedes tiene proyectos, tiene cosas para contar, tiene cosas para mostrarlos, vamos a estar esperando a las 3 y a las 5 de la tarde en el Spatial Chat para hacer una especie de feria impromptu. Carola Fernández Mures va a estar coordinando esos espacios, con lo cual, nada, súmense ahí, mándenos mensajes si quieren mostrar algo, vamos a estar disponibilizando ese espacio para que las cosas pasen. Para que las cosas pasen también, si bien nuestros sponsors como Facebook Journalism Project y Google News Initiative nos dieron muchísimo soporte, tenemos un link, ¿sí? Un cafecito.app, cafecito.app/mediaparty, para que puedan hacer aportes económicos ahí. Digamos, obviamente este evento es totalmente gratuito. Creemos que la oportunidad que tenemos de escuchar a la gente que está viniendo, o digamos, hoy tenemos líderes de producto de Washington Post, de The Guardian, tenemos gente de Google, todo eso, nada, básicamente gratis, es una cosa maravillosa, con lo cual si pueden participar, está súper bueno ahí, cafecito.app. Última cosa importante, si están conectados, digamos, desde Zoom, sepan que las keynotes van a tener una traducción simultánea, sí, van a poder en el cliente de Zoom, van a tener un mundito en donde tienen interpretación y van a poder seleccionar el idioma en español si quieren. Lo mismo con los workshops, les recordamos que se sumen a tiempo porque la capacidad es limitada, si no los van a poder ver por Facebook Live y también los van a poder ver por YouTube. Y bueno, sin más, le quiero dar el paso a nuestro host de este día. Sí, este día es sobre producto digital. La verdad es que el rol de Product Manager es un rol que muchos de ustedes lo sabrán, es bastante ingrato. No sé cuántos de ustedes se autoperciben Product Manager, los puedo leer ahí en el chat. Pero si las cosas salen bien, siempre fue por el contenido, diseño, los programadores, el negocio. Si las cosas salen mal, en general es porque el Product Manager no pensó en algo. Gastón Serralta, ¿cómo estás, Gastón? Es un poco ingrato, ¿no, esto?
Ay, sí, será ingrato. Gracias, Gino. Gracias por decirlo, porque la verdad que es un rol súper difícil. Supongo que vos también tendrás ese problema hoy, ¿no?
Por
Es
supuesto,
ingrato.
siempre está. Es un poco ingrato, pero es maravilloso, es súper lindo. Y por suerte, hoy tenemos la oportunidad de aprender de los mejores.
Y sí, la verdad que sí. Nada, súper agradecido por la intro. Bienvenidos a todos, como decía Gino, novena edición de la mediaparty. Es un honor estar acá, particularmente en este día 2 de producto. Creo que es un mundo aparte, el producto en general. Nada, gracias a todos por estar desde casa, en pijamas, con pantuflas, pandémicos. La verdad que es un gran esfuerzo humano y de todo tipo estar hoy acá. Quería un poco arrancar este vertical de producto, como con una serie de pensamientos y reflexiones que me parece que pueden servir de puntapié para todos aquellos, como decía Gino, que hoy están haciendo de Product Managers. Vamos a hablar de un montón de cosas en el día de hoy. Vamos a tener keynotes, vamos a tener talleres, pero todas esas muchas cosas que vamos a hablar y que nada, le ponemos el título de producto digital para un medio, nada, me parece que vale la pena hacer un poco un punteo, ¿no? Creo que si le preguntamos a cualquier persona que trabaje hoy en un medio, en un publisher de contenido, depende a quién le preguntemos, producto puede ser una cosa o puede ser otra. Yo creo que hay que tener una visión un poco más holística, digamos, hay que pensar el producto como un todo. ¿Qué es? ¿Es el contenido? ¿Es solamente la tecnología? Si le preguntas al tecnológico te dice, no, yo diseño tecnología y soy el mejor. Si le preguntas al diseñador va a decir, no, lo diseño yo, el producto es lo que ve la gente. Si le preguntamos a un periodista, a un redactor, a una pluma, va a decir, definitivamente es el contenido que yo genero. Yo creo que el producto son, como decía antes, son muchas cosas y es la visión del todo junto, ¿no? Me parece como súper importante de quien tenga ese rol de Product Director, de Product Manager o simplemente de remador de todo lo, como dice un amigo, me parece que es importantísimo tener en cuenta un montón de cosas. Y el producto, otra vez, es el todo. Creo también que hay algunos pilares que son fundamentales y que los tenemos que tener en cuenta siempre cuando hablamos de producto. Por un lado, la relevancia, calidad, ofrecer algún tipo de personalización, darle a ese contenido, a esa aplicación, a ese diseño, algo que lo distinga y que lo haga distinto, que sea relevante. Por otro lado, la eficiencia, entender que no alcanza solamente con hacer un contenido y que por ahí no tenga audiencia, no alcanza con hacer la mejor tecnología y que no sea performante o que cueste mucho. Creo que es un balance. La eficiencia es algo que tiene que estar atravesado por todos los productos que son para medios. Por otro lado, la velocidad. La velocidad en tanto en la generación, en la publicación, en la distribución, en el consumo, tenemos que estar al paso de la audiencia que tenemos. Y la velocidad es como un vector fundamental. La innovación, hoy se habla mucho de innovación y nada, a veces parece que hacer una aplicación súper rápida es innovador, pero en definitiva lo que estamos buscando es agregar valor desde lo tecnológico, desde el contenido. Algo de lo que se habla mucho, sabemos que los medios hace unos años están atravesando un periodo como difícil, la sustentabilidad. Y no solamente en términos económicos, donde la monetización es mega requete importante, sino también que la propuesta de valor que estamos dando a la audiencia sea sostenible a lo largo del tiempo. No alcanza con hacer un producto COVID-19 y después olvidarnos de qué pasa en el 2021. Por último, y nada, no todo el mundo habla mucho del tema, data. Medir, ajustar. Esto es un componente fundamental. Otra vez, puedo hacer el mejor contenido que si no tengo ni la más pálida idea de cómo está performando o hacer la mejor aplicación que creo que funciona bien. Es cuestión de sacar el dedo así, mirar cómo viene el viento y decir más o menos va por ahí. No se trata de eso. Hay que usar la data y hay que medir y ajustar todo el tiempo. Creo que hay 3 desafíos, particularmente, que tienen los productos para medios en el 2020, que también es importantísimo tenerlo en cuenta. La afinidad de la audiencia, en primer lugar. Como decía ese eslogan hace un tiempo, lo importante no es que vengas, sino que vuelvas. Es generar ese enlace entre contenido, marca, producto, tecnología con la audiencia. La afinidad es un desafío súper, súper difícil. Mañana va a haber alguna charla de eso que me parece que va a estar buenísima respecto a membresía, suscripciones, registración. Creo que es un tema que hay que prestarle mucha atención. El segundo desafío creo que tiene que ver con la distribución. Hoy el contenido está en 1 millón de plataformas donde incluso los product managers no saben a dónde fue a parar. Entonces hace un esfuerzo importantísimo por empujar, pero si no tenemos en cuenta que la distribución es algo que tenemos que atender desde el producto, estamos perdidos. Y perdón que haga hincapié en esto, el tercer desafío tiene que ver con la sustentabilidad. Cómo hacer que eso pueda perpetuarse en el tiempo. Producto es muchas cosas, como decía antes. Es una sola, si lo pensamos con una sola palabra, pero son muchas cosas que hay que tener en cuenta. Todos los que tengan el rol de meterse en el mundo del producto tienen que indiscutiblemente tener todas estas cosas en cuenta. Ahora me meto un poco en lo que es este día 2, ¿no? Este día es que va a ser súper intenso, como decía antes. Va a haber un montón de charlas a la tarde que van a estar en la grilla oficial y en el special chat que está buenísimo. No sé si lo probaron ayer, pero es una experiencia única. Les tiro algunos temas de lo que va a pasar hoy. Vamos a hablar de data sin código, porque a veces se dice data, nos imaginamos a un nerdito tocando teclas, pero se puede hacer data sin codear ni una línea. Vamos a hablar de algunos procesos de diseño del producto. Ahí va a estar César, creo que es una charla que va a estar súper buena. Vamos a hablar de interfaces conversacionales. Vamos a hablar de cómo bucear ese contenido y cómo buscar ese petróleo en redes y WhatsApp. Vamos a hablar de construir aplicaciones rápidas y resilientes, de experiencias interactivas, y después de todo lo que se vaya dando a propósito de producto, ¿no? Que el special chat va a ser ahí como un espacio súper rico. Para darle kickoff un poco a esta primera parte, vamos a ir al primer speaker del día con su keynote. Una eminencia, es un honor presentar a Greg Barber, que es el director de producto de redacción del Washington Post y es el cofundador del Coral Project, proyecto súper importante para la comunidad. Greg, how are you? Thank you for joining us today.
I'm doing well, Gastón. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Please go ahead. All the audience is yours.
All right. Thanks very much. Let me share my screen real quickly, and then we can get off to the races. So, hello from Arlington, Virginia, in the United States, and the chair in my dining room where I am spending way too much time lately. I'm Greg Barber, the director of newsroom product for the Washington Post. Normally, I would be coming to you from here with my coworkers, but this year I'm coming to you from here with a more surly coworker. I'm glad to be talking with you on this day devoted to product, because in this year of forced separation, the role of product is more important than ever. We're the people who bring other people together, even when being physically together isn't possible. I'll talk with you about 3 main topics today. 1, what is newsroom product? What have we done lately? And then what's next? So at the Washington Post, the newsroom product team is a group of force multipliers. We work across teams to listen, to help define the problems we want to solve, to organize the people who work together, and to communicate so that everyone inside the team and stakeholders outside of it or aware of our progress, and then iterate to be sure that the product that we're creating reaches a high standard of quality. I've worked at the intersection of journalism and technology for about 20 years, and the skill that I've learned that I use the most is this one: translation, says the guy who's speaking at Mediaparty in English. But stick with me on this one. The most successful product people at the Post, inside and outside the newsroom, are fluent in multiple languages: journalism, software engineering, advertising, marketing. We help people connect, and that connection helps keep our projects on track. So, what have we done lately? Well, we're helping readers to make sense of this virus that's upended all of our lives. Early in our coverage of the coronavirus entering the United States, at just about the time that we were starting to work remotely, I heard colleagues talking about this mythical set of internal data that everyone in the building was trying to get their hands on. Turns out it was from my colleague, Jacqueline Dupree. She had started collecting state case and death data by hand, going to websites and just surfacing this data, finding it, and putting it into a Google spreadsheet. Reporters from around the room found her work invaluable, and we knew that our readers would too, but that this approach, one person, Google spreadsheet, wouldn't scale. So, working with Jacqueline, my team gathered people from around the newsroom, designers from our graphic team, reporters from our investigative group, data analysts, and the engineering team that had just finished a database to house our election results. So then together, within 6 weeks, we built a database using that initial database from our election results to serve coronavirus data gathered by Post reporters and from external sources. Today, readers can use our tools to explore the impact of coronavirus at the local, national, and international levels. When our readers flock to an explainer from graphics reporter Harry Stevens about how diseases like coronavirus spread so quickly, we realized that we had a story that could help people around the world. So my team helped form a group to translate that story and work with news organizations around the world to promote it. In the end, we published the piece in 17 different languages, and it's been viewed by many millions of people. When investigative reporter Andrew Tran came to us with word from an expert source that more people had likely died from coronavirus in the US than was being officially reported, we knew we had a complicated story on our hands that would take time and coordination to get right. So my team gathered and launched a working group of reporters, editors, artists, and analysts, people from across the newsroom. But then we also brought in a team of epidemiologists at schools like Yale and Harvard to kick off a series of stories informing readers about the concept of excess deaths, which is an uptick in the number of deaths expected from certain causes or at certain times of year that can indicate the impact of a new or external factor. These stories helped readers understand the true impact of coronavirus while healthcare providers and governments were still working out their best practices. And now, of course, you can't have a speaker from the US without us talking about our upcoming election. And my team is deep into supporting our work on that massive story. Most important is helping readers to understand where candidates stand on the issues. Our graphics team launched a pair of tools to help voters choose among presidential primary candidates. This was back some months ago, based on their views on issues like gun control, education, climate change, healthcare, and more. They also launched a quiz that helped readers pick a candidate based on their shared views. Coronavirus has prompted changes to how and when US states allow voting by mail, and there's much misinformation being disseminated on this topic. So to make sure that our readers understand how and when they're able to vote, our graphics team launched this interactive tool. It gives state-by-state information about how to register to vote, when ballots will be mailed in certain states, and deadlines for returning ballots. Does my vote matter is still a question being asked by many Americans. To show how every vote can indeed influence this upcoming election, we launched a tool to help readers understand the impact of fluctuations in voting by age, race, gender, and more. And then just this week, on Wednesday, I think it was, we launched the ability for our reporters to file short bursts of analysis to our political live blogs. It was Tuesday, bringing the best of analysis that you'd find on Twitter directly to the pages of the Washington Post. Readers can keep up with the campaign's moves and issues by subscribing to the trailer, anchored by political reporter Dave Weigel. And our reporters lend their voices to clear, audible analysis on a feed that brings together the best of our political podcasts. So, what do all of these projects have in common? They had a clear problem that needed to be solved. So we needed to take our coverage of coronavirus data and scale it. We needed to show readers how to cast a mail-in ballot. We wanted to tell the story of excess deaths and needed a lot of external expertise to do it. There was the institutional will to solve these problems. Our managing editors, Cameron Barr and Emilio Garcia Ruiz, were the wind at our backs for our coronavirus coverage. And our engineering teams were willing to bend their roadmaps to accommodate coverage of this incredible story. We found that we were all motivated. It was that same spark that led all of us to careers at the Washington Post as editors or reporters or technologists that brought us together for these projects. We were persistent. We were collegial. We bridged gaps left by our sudden dispersing for remote work through Slack and Zoom, each taking upon ourselves to make sure that we were communicating. Which brings me to a piece of advice that I'll tuck into the middle of this presentation. The secret to success as a convener of people in a news organization, in my experience, is trust. In a role like mine, you're always asking others to take calculated risks with limited newsroom resources, because they're always limited, right? So it's managers, it's editors, it's reporters. With each step, you need to prove that you're worthy of that investment. You need to research your idea and make sure that it's solid. Estimate work accurately and update those estimates regularly. Be honest about successes and failures. Radical transparency. Always communicate what the organization should learn from what you've done. Trust is the key. Time working with you should always be time well spent. Okay, enough of the advice. What's next for us at the Post? Well, I'll show you our empty newsroom again for this one. We're figuring out how to cover an election with a fully remote newsroom. Normally, that space right there would be full on election night, and it won't be in November. So it takes a different kind of coordination that's keeping all of us on our toes, Slack channels and Zoom rooms and email trains, ensuring everyone has access to up-to-date information and the colleagues that they need for collaborations. It's an exciting challenge. And I hope that this time next year, I'll have a great story to tell you about it. Amid a reckoning about race and representation in the US and around the world, news organizations are making long overdue internal changes. At the Post, we're hiring for more than a dozen reporters and editors to fuel diverse coverage, including a managing editor for diversity and inclusion. My team has already started scoping out tools that we can use to streamline our hiring and enliven our coverage. I'll say, though, that I'm proud of the work my colleagues are doing today on this topic, including this resource package pointing to Post reporting on the history of injustice and inequality, which you can dig through by topic. I'm also keen to see what my colleagues have in store for About Us, which is a stream of reporting on identity, politics, and culture. You can find them there on Twitter. In 2021, my team will kick into high gear our ongoing work to add features and workflow improvements to our CMS, along with our colleagues in Washington Post Engineering and in ARC, our software as a service content management provider. Because of ARC, I'm guessing this CMS screen grab might look familiar to quite a few of you. We survey our newsroom twice a year for feedback about the CMS, what people like about it, what people don't like, features they'd like to see. Our next survey is actually coming out next month. And so we've got quite a backlog of ideas. But most of all, we'll be listening. And then the cycle starts again. So thanks so much for listening to me today. If you've got thoughts, ideas, or questions, please feel free to reach out via email or Twitter.
So Greg, thank you very much for the presentation. It was quite helpful. I'm sure that everyone in the room is going to gather some thoughts from you. So thank you very much. I have a quick question.
Sure.
What do you think that this was the most challenging part of the product design process or the product generation in times of COVID? If you have to pick the most challenging one for us to share.
Yeah, at the beginning of it, it was communicating. So we were really used to a key part of our product collaboration process was bringing people together in a room, and there's quite a lot that you miss from not having that moment of collaboration, that sort of moment of being able to kind of feed off of each other's energy. And we had to, not to get too mystical about it, but we had to find a way to kind of replicate that in this sort of an experience. And I think it really was all of us kind of learning the timing of how do I communicate now? How do I make sure that that the people that I'm working with understand what I'm trying to say about, whether it's an opinion about a project or a status report about where I am. One of the challenges, I'm sure every person who's worked in product that's on this call knows this one. One of the challenges that you have is keeping track of a project, asking that "Are we there yet?" question without seeming like you're poking someone in the shoulder and annoying them, right? So it was a whole new kind of cadence of that when we're all separated so much by distance.
So it makes sense. It makes sense. And if you mix that with trust, the thing that you were mentioning in your presentation, is there any specific tool that you think that could help to provide more transparency between the co-workers, the newsroom in general? A specific tool?
It's not as much I wouldn't say that there's a specific tool to introduce, because I don't think we're at that point yet, or at that point now. I think because we are all dispersed, it's really a matter of meeting your audience where they are, right? So, and in this case, your audience is your set of coworkers. So if everybody's on Slack, then you're talking on Slack. If people don't use Slack and you can't get them to do it, now there's no walking around the newsroom and sort of pointing their head at it, right? You have to just, they're all in separate spaces. So really, this is the stage where we have to just meet our colleagues where they are. And so at the Washington Post, we use Slack a lot. We really embraced Zoom, and so it's really and we still cling to email in ways that still depress me. So I think that it's really a matter of knowing which tools you need to use in order to reach that right set of people, and knowing which tools to use for the right kind of conversation, right? So if there's one of the biggest mistakes I see is, people will send via email a question that requires everyone to answer. And then suddenly you have this sort of disjointed conversation where people are trying to catch in, and it's the email chain that will never die. Yes. It's kind of choosing the correct tool for the kind of conversation you want to have. But I think at this point, we're going to need to wait until we're out of this posture in order to really try anything new.
Greg, again, thank you very much for your presentation. It was illuminating. So I hope you do great, and you be safe at home.
Thanks so much, and the same to everyone out there. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bueno, la verdad, Greg, un fenómeno, un honor, un genio, una eminencia en el mundo del producto. La verdad es que un placer poder escucharlo y tenerlo en la mediaparty otra vez. Es algo que para mí es increíble. Bueno, nada, seguimos. Sigue el día 2 de producto. Me gustaría que todos le demos un gran agradecimiento a las intérpretes que están haciendo que todo este contenido se pueda disfrutar en español también para quienes no hablan inglés. Es un aporte excelente. Antes de seguir con nuestra próxima charla, algunos avisos dominicales que vale la pena mencionar en este punto. Por un lado, nada, otra vez, gracias a los organizadores por invitarme y por armar otra vez y por 9º año consecutivo la Media Party. Acuérdense que el año que viene se vienen los 10 años y nada, vamos a tirar la casa por la ventana. Agradecer a los sponsors, agradecer al Facebook Journalism Project y al Google News Initiative, que también ayudan a que esta conferencia se haga posible. Contarles también que en Instagram y en Twitter pueden encontrar a HackHackersBA, Hackers Buenos Aires, para que se puedan subir a la conversación y dejarnos o la foto de las pantuflas o del pijama. Me encantaría ver cómo hay algunas pantuflas dando vueltas y cómo estamos todos en Bermuda, a pesar de que todavía sea invierno. Los hashtags son Media Party y Pijama Conference. He visto algunas fotos que son muy locas, están buenísimas. Los invito a meterse ahí. También decirles que siguen los talleres a la tarde, se pueden sumar. Está el espacio, el chat, del cual ya hablaremos más adelante, y todo va a ser referido a producto. Así que nada, espero que se queden y nos sigan acompañando. Bueno, Next va a seguir con nosotros también otra eminencia, parte del equipo del GNI de Google. Se une a nosotros Arun Venkataraman, que nos va a hablar de la aceleración de la transformación del negocio en la región y que es definitivamente una charla espectacular. Estuve viendo algunas cosas y realmente vale la pena. So, Arun, thank you very much for joining us. I'm leaving you with the audience, so all yours.
Thank you, Gastón, and thank you to the entire Media Party team for having us today. As Gastón mentioned, my name is Arun Venkataraman. I'm based in New York, and I'm on the global strategy team for the Google News Initiative. Have been working in the news space at Google for a little bit more than 5 years now, which is a little bit surreal at times. Today, we're going to talk about accelerating business transformation across Latin America, but specifically a program that we just launched an hour ago and that we're proud to be able to share with you. So I will present. Perfecto. So we launched the Google News Initiative nearly 2.5 years ago, the March of 2018. And we did it in order to respond to a very real need that publishers all across the world were voicing to us, which was support and help in transitioning to digital and finding sustainability. And so if we look at the work of the Google News Initiative, specifically in Latin America across the first 2.5 years, a lot of that work has been focused on projects with individual partners, scaled programs, labs like the Subscriptions Lab or the Contributions Lab, just working alongside publishers in the ecosystem, subject matter experts, to start to discover the solutions for sustainability in the digital context. And we took the approach of really experimenting and learning alongside the industry. As we look back at all of that knowledge 2.5 years later, we felt that there was a moment now for us to share the full extent of what we've learned and to make it as accessible and useful to publishers, not just in Latin America, but all across the world. And so I'm excited to announce the launch of the Google News Initiative Digital Growth Program, which is focused on helping small to mid-sized news organizations globally succeed online. But really publishers of all sizes will be able to find materials that can help them as they navigate their own journeys for digital success. I wanted to share some of the guiding principles of this program to give you a sense of where this material comes from. First, it's important that we grounded the program in unique insights and intellectual assets. And so, as you'll see, we've developed a lot of playbooks, workshops, materials, the focus of which is to really share everything that we've learned across our projects, across our labs, case studies, insights, and make it available to everyone here. Second, it was important that we launched this program in partnership with subject matter experts and industry associations. So the materials that you'll see here aren't simply a reflection of what Google thinks. In fact, the role that we've really played here is to bring in subject matter experts on topics like subscriptions or contributions or product and data together, and then work with industry associations to ensure that we're able to communicate the collective wisdom and knowledge in that particular topic. Third, we want to respect that there aren't one-size-fits-all solutions for all publishers. There's no one solution that is going to be the answer to digital sustainability or digital transformation. What we can do is provide structured approaches and materials that help publishers be as informed as possible as they make key strategic and tactical decisions on their digital transformation journey. And so one of the real focus points for us as we've developed these materials over the past 6 months is to help you go on a journey and ensure that as you make decisions along that journey, you have as much information, as many exercises, tools, and resources as possible, so you feel confident about the decisions you make. And then finally, it was important for us that the materials that we offer are regularly refreshed to reflect the body of knowledge as it evolves. There are 4 components of the program. So there are playbooks, which are really strategic frameworks, recommendations for solving key business challenges. And along the way, we support that with case studies from publishers who've had success and tactics, actionable tactics that you can take back to your newsrooms and implement. Interactive exercises that really bring the lessons from the playbook to life and allow you to add your own data to understand what the journey might look like for you. And then to bring the playbooks and interactive exercises to life, a series of workshops that we'll be kicking off the first week in October, and that we'll be doing in both Spanish Latin America and in Brazil, in Spanish and Portuguese, respectively. And I'll share a little bit more information about that. And then finally, we'll continue to launch these smaller labs with about 8 to 15 publishers participating in each, as an opportunity to really test out hypotheses that can inform our collective understanding of these critical business topics, but also help publishers with personalized diagnostics, personalized action plans that helps them on their own journey for digital transformation. And finally, all of these components come together in an online hub, a website that I'll share with you shortly. We're launching initially across 5 different topics. Audience development, the focus there is on the best practices and the strategy to grow your readership, to deepen your engagement with audiences. Reader revenue, as publishers all across the world have been looking to diversify their revenue models, we increasingly get questions around what are the best practices, what are learnings around building and strengthening your contributions or subscriptions business. Advertising revenue, what are best practices to optimize advertising revenue? Data, how do you increase your overall data maturity as an organization? How do you make data inimical, foundational, fundamental to who you are as a news organization and how you approach key business decisions? And then finally, product. Greg's presentation really brought to life the ways in which a product-oriented culture has been really central to the Washington Post success. We want to share resources that we've been able to collect from our learnings and insights through projects in the Google News Initiative these past couple of years to really help publishers think through how to approach building out products in a news context and to use those design thinking principles. So the focus of the program is North America, Latin America, Brazil and Spanish Latin America, Asia Pacific, and Europe. We're really focused, so it's a global program, but it was extremely important to us that as we launched these materials that we had regional examples and that the materials were also localized in local languages. As I mentioned before, the materials will be available in both Spanish and Portuguese. It's also important for us to really lean into our role as a convener to bring together industry associations, subject matter experts who really understand this space at depth. And so what you see here are the logos of partners and vendors that we've worked with to really develop materials across each one of these five business topics. And you'll see here there's a number of partners in Latin America that we've worked with, Miram, Black, SIP, CMS Medio, Iconosur, to develop our reader revenue materials specifically. So today, September 17th, we launched in Asia Pacific, Latin America, and North America with a focus on reader revenue. So this is the first topic that we'll have a playbook and interactive exercises for, and that we'll launch workshops for that anyone can attend and anyone can sign up for, starting the first week of October. In the coming months, we'll release additional materials for our other topics and also launch workshops on those topics. So this, there's actually a website. Now that the website is launched, I probably don't need to show you the screenshot, but I'll go through the presentation and actually jump to the website itself so you can see it in action. But here you see all 5 topics called out. To just give you a little bit more of an understanding for what we're hoping to accomplish with the reader revenue component, it's really to help publishers understand the differences between subscriptions model, contributions models, what is a better fit for that particular news organization, and how do you make the strategic and tactical decisions you need to not only build a subscriptions or contributions model, but to ensure that it's optimized. A couple of the key assets that are part of this program, on the left-hand side, you'll see a screenshot of the playbook, which is available in Spanish and Portuguese. And then the right-hand side, the interactive exercises where you can add your own data to understand what the journey for reader revenue success might look like for your news organization. And I've added just a GIF here of what the reader revenue playbook actually looks like. So there's multiple sections, everything from establishing your reader revenue foundations, using surveys and interviews to better and more deeply understand readers' needs, to developing and communicating your value proposition, to optimizing the user funnel. How do you get the science of the user funnel right? So you're optimizing for discovering your audiences, engaging your audiences, converting those audiences into either contributors or subscribers, monetizing them effectively, and then retaining them in the long run by really investing in those relationships. So the full kind of spectrum of activities that we've seen publishers across the world who've been successful build out reader revenue models do for their own respective organizations, and along the way sharing their examples, their insights, their case studies. There are a few standalone interactive exercises that we've built out. There are interactive exercises that are embedded within the flow of the playbook, but in addition, you'll see here a few additional exercises that we thought that would be helpful for publishers to access directly. This is an opportunity sizing exercise, and it's essentially an exercise that allows you to understand what the 1-year reader revenue opportunity for your news organization could look like. And we ask you a few questions. Of course, none of the data is stored or collected, so this is something that you can add data to without fear that it's going to be collected or used in any other way. But it's really an exercise or a tool for news organizations who are at the beginning of their reader revenue journey to really make the case to their to others in the organization that reader revenue is an opportunity that the news organization should consider seriously or not. And so, one of the things that we oftentimes say is that there isn't any right answer or one-size-fits-all answers to these really critical business problems. But what there are informed decisions to those challenges and to those problems. And so this gives you an opportunity to be as informed as possible as you go back to your news organizations and have those conversations about what diversification of revenue might look like. We also have a user funnel diagnostic. The user funnel is really the science of how do you ensure you're effectively engaging, converting, retaining your readers. And so we've, through our labs, been able to put together benchmarks across key metrics like average visits per user, conversion rate, your average reader revenue per user. And what this exercise gives you the opportunity to do is to add your news organization's own data and see where you compare against those industry benchmarks. And then in those areas where you could do better, we provide tactics, actionable tactics and recommendations that you can use to improve your performance. I think it's for me and for many of us at the Google News Initiative, fundamentally it is about the journalism. It is about ensuring that there is an ecosystem where quality, sustainable information continues to be created and is available for everyone who needs it. We know the importance of that information probably now more than ever before in the wake of the pandemic, and in a year that has certainly put for us front and center why journalism is so fundamentally important. But what we oftentimes find is when we look at sustainability of news organizations who are looking at reader revenue models, the difference between success and failure might be being able to convert 1 or 2 out of every 100 people that come to your website to becoming a subscriber or contributor. In our internal studies, we've seen that publishers oftentimes need to convert 3 to 5% of their reader base to be successful, which, to put it differently, is 3 to 5 out of every 100 people. So the difference between converting 2 people out of every 100 and 3 people out of every 100 can be the difference between having a successful reader revenue model and not having a successful reader revenue model. And so every little bit that you can do to optimize the user funnel, to improve your performance across these key metrics can be essential to your success. Finally, goal setting. So part of the a critical component of the reader revenue journey for our publishers that we've worked with was putting out a long-term plan that they can use, or creating a long-term plan for reader revenue success that they could use to really galvanize or energize the entire news organization around. If you think about the success of news organizations like the New York Times or the Financial Times in reader revenue, a really key milestone for that process was setting a goal, 1 million subscribers, 10 million subscribers, that they could galvanize the entire news organization around. And so what we do here is walk you through an exercise where we ask you to set that long-term goal, and we provide you some guidance on how you can think about it, how other news organizations have thought about it, to select the key target metrics that you're going to focus on to achieve that goal, and then the tactics that you're going to be investing in to be able to achieve those target metrics. And so when you go through this exercise, the hope is that you have a plan that you can share across the editorial and the business sides of your news organization to understand what reader revenue success could look like for your own news organization, and that really pulls from the lessons that we have embedded in the playbooks. Finally, we have a series of workshops. This is a lot of content with the playbook, with the interactive exercises. And so to really make it a little bit easier to digest, we're doing a series of workshops. We're starting off with a reader revenue overview workshop, which will provide a high-level overview of what it takes to be successful in reader revenue and the content that we'll be covering. Following that, every week and then every 2 weeks, we'll be doing deep dive modules on specific topics that we address in the playbook. So establishing your reader revenue foundations. How do you size your reader revenue opportunity? How do you use surveys and interviews and analytics to really deeply understand your readers' needs, which is at the foundation of reader revenue success? How do you set your long-term reader revenue goals? How do you optimize your user funnel? How do you develop and communicate your value proposition? So through a series of 5 workshop modules, we'll be covering those topics. And in between those workshop modules, we'll be hosting a series of expert discussions with publishers we've worked with who've had success in reader revenue. Some of the expert sessions, 3 of the expert sessions will take place in English, but we'll have Spanish subtitles. And then the last expert session will actually take place in Spanish and feature publishers who've had success with subscription models in Spanish Latin America. And to give you a sense of the workshop and what the workshop sign-up page looks like for the Spanish version, you see the link here, but feel free to check it out. We'll be sure to share the links with the mediaparty team so they can share that with this group afterwards. And then to give you a sense of who you'll be hearing from during these workshops, it's a combination of industry experts, Googlers internally who've become subject matter experts in these topics, and then industry associations that we've worked with. In Latin America, we're working with a whole host of Latin American vendors and industry associations, and all of the trainings will be delivered in either Spanish or Portuguese. Thank you. I'm mindful that we're at time, but I will just very quickly show you the actual website itself. And just to give you a sense of what the experience looks like, I'm going to go to Spanish. Sorry, it always auto translates. Nope.
Don't worry, don't worry, Arun. It was very, very helpful talk. Very helpful. Thank you very much for sharing. Just in terms of clarifying, what do you think that is a target audience for this program? Just to let the audience know who can apply to the program.
Yeah, so the program and the workshops itself are available to anyone and everyone. So there's no application process. You just need to sign up for the workshop on the website. What I would say, because our first topic is focused on reader revenue, publishers who are early on their reader revenue journey, who are maybe having some really critical challenges with reader revenue and need some help to think through those challenges. And I think we've primarily found that to mean small to mid-sized news organizations. So small legacy news organizations, but also emerging digital native news organizations. I will say, though, that there's some larger news organizations in Latin America that have taken a look at our materials and have found it very useful too. What I would recommend, the program works most effectively if you're able to attend all of the modules and all 5 of the workshop modules. But if you do have specific challenges, let's say around optimizing your user funnel, we also encourage you to maybe just visit that or attend that particular deep dive session. And then there'll also be a Slack channel where you can ask consultants questions. So I would welcome anyone and everyone who has questions. I also recommend having folks from both the business and the newsroom side of the organization attend these workshops, as the fundamental challenge for reader revenue success in particular is breaking down the silos between the editorial and business sides of the newsroom, and ensuring that they can work together cohesively. And I think it has a lot of good effects. Reader revenue, particularly contributions, can have a lot of really good impact on journalism also in these news organizations, because it changes the orientation away from how many eyeballs does your journalism get to how deeply are readers engaging with your journalism. And so it gives newsrooms an opportunity to really invest in the sort of journalism and stories that are the reasons why they oftentimes wanted to become journalists. And so anyone and everyone, newsroom, editorial side, but primarily publishers who are early on their reader revenue journeys or have challenges that they'd like to address.
Sounds great. Very good advices. So Arun, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for all the details. And I'm sure that we have a few newsrooms in the audience that are going to leverage the program. So thank you.
No, and thank you so much, Gastón. And I'll share the materials with you so you can send it out to the broader group.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Stay safe, stay healthy, everyone.
Same for you. Bueno, seguimos con este día 2 de la... Miren qué remera cool que tengo. Seguimos con el día 2 de producto de la mediaparty. Todavía quedan un montón de cosas por ver. Otra vez les dejo 3 o 4 avisitos. En principio, para algunos que comentaban que tenían alguna dificultad para ver la presentación de Arun porque se cortaba, no se hagan problema, que nos vamos a hacer los materiales y los vamos a compartir a través de las cuentas de redes de la mediaparty, para que todos lo puedan ver y revisar, pero muy interesante. Después les quería comentar un poco más acerca del Spatial Chat. No sé si tuvieron la oportunidad de verlo. Si van a mediaparty.info van a encontrar dentro del schedule el link para entrar al chat. Es un chat súper loco, que está buenísimo, pero lo más importante es que trata de replicar ese ambiente de lo que pasa un poco en la escalera del Conex, ¿no? De hecho van a ver que tiene esa imagen de fondo. Y la idea es que podamos tener algunas charlas uno a muchos en ese espacio, y se van a dar cosas súper buenas. Ayer estuvo buenísimo y hoy hay una propuesta superadora de las cuales ya un poco les adelantó Gino, y les va a contar Gino un poco más adelante. Por último, repetir esto: si alguno tiene ganas de colaborar con la mediaparty, nos puede invitar a un cafecito en cafecito.app. Si van al mediaparty.info van a encontrar ahí un link para invitarnos a un cafecito. Así que 1, 2, 3, 5, 25 o 50 cafecitos, los que quieran, siempre bienvenidos. Bueno, ahora vamos a dar paso a otra eminencia. La verdad que no paramos de traer talento. Ahora va a seguir con su keynote nuestro próximo speaker. Insisto, otra vez, un honor presentarlo. Se trata de Caspar Llewellyn Smith, que es el Chief Product Officer en The Guardian y, ojo, miembro del comité ejecutivo de The Guardian de News and Media. Tiene un montón de cosas para contarnos y hoy nos va a hablar de las lecciones que todavía The Guardian no pudo aprender del todo y que está haciendo un esfuerzo para entender cómo manejar el ingreso basado en lectores. So, Caspar, thank you very much for joining us today. Great to have you and to meet you. I leave you the audience.
Great, thank you very much indeed. And thanks for having me here. It's just a real pleasure. I'm just going to speak for about 15 minutes is the idea. Let me try and share my screen because I've got some slides and then I'll just talk through them. Tell me if this is now working. Okay, I hope you can all see that now. I'm Caspar Llewellyn Smith, that's right, the Chief Product Officer at The Guardian. I've been in that role for about 4 or 5 months, the whole time of the COVID pandemic, really. Before that, I was the editor of The Guardian's website for about the last 5 years. And I'm going to talk to you about some of the lessons we at The Guardian are still learning about what it takes to become a successful reader revenues business. I was just listening to a bit of what Arun from Google was saying about their playbook, and I tell you, we could have done with some of that 5 years ago when we first headed off sort of down this route. So that is the first lesson. Let me just get this right. Lesson 1. Okay, so The Guardian was founded in Manchester in the north of England in 1821. Apologies if this sounds a bit like a history lesson to begin with. But the point is that 199 years later, we have millions of readers all over the world. Last month, we had 230 million unique browsers. I think 215,000 of those unique browsers were in Argentina. So I say thank you very much. Thanks for reading us. Our business model had always been based on newsstand sales and advertising. But 5 years ago, in the summer of 2015, we felt like we'd reached a crossroads. Newspaper sales were in long-term structural decline. And now the digital advertising that we were counting on was suddenly flooding towards Facebook and flooding towards our friends at Google. That meant that we were a bit overstretched. We'd overinvested in some areas. And The Guardian doesn't have a conventional proprietor. We don't have shareholders. We're not part of a larger organization. We are truly independent. We exist just to do the journalism. And it was a real concern that we might run out of money, and that would be the end of it. We wouldn't reach our 200th anniversary. That summer, we had a new chief executive, we had a new editor-in-chief, and they asked a group of 4 of us to think about the future and what we were going to do. We hadn't put up a paywall, and that was partly one of the reasons, was the reason that we managed to bring our journalism to so many more millions of readers around the world. So should we do that? Or what about developing a membership proposition based on something like live events? And we had a tiny fledgling membership set up at the time, but very small. And then one afternoon, we drew the picture that I hope you can see on the screen, which is really simple. It just said, look, we can develop a model that's based on live events or on giving our readers a branded Guardian shopping bag, something like that. Or we can just try asking for money and make a very direct appeal to readers based on the strength of the role that we think our journalism plays in society, an appeal that was just really based on our purpose. And if we start that way, at the top of the y-axis in this picture, we can always head in the direction of the x-axis. You can go from top left to bottom right. We can try an emotional appeal, and if it doesn't work, we can try something a bit more transactional. We can, then move down in that direction. Starting the other way, trying to go from bottom right to top left, that was always going to be much harder to do. If you begin in a transactional relationship, is it going to be harder to then talk about your values and your purpose? So that's what we did. We took what was really the easiest path, the most straightforward, obvious thing to do, although it didn't seem at all obvious at the time. It seemed a really weird thing to be doing. We just asked readers directly for money. And that proved a really great move. It turned out that there were hundreds of thousands of people willing to hand over their cash and open up their checkbooks or their bank cards once we worked out how to ask them for it.
Caspar, sorry for the interruption. Do you mind turning on your camera so the image fits? Yes, thank you.
It was off and it must have come on again. So if you didn't see the previous picture,
that way, yes, that's the way. Thank you. Now
you can see that. Okay. This is the picture I was talking about. So sorry about that. Saying make an appeal based on people's belief in the value of Guardian journalism. Start top left. You can always move bottom right to give people stuff, things like bags or whatever you want to do. It's much harder to go the other direction. So that was the first thing that we did. That was lesson 1 of the 6 quick lessons I'm going to try and provide. Lesson 2. So look, I talked about our belief in the role that our journalism plays in society and our purpose. But what actually was that? I'd been part of this group of people thinking about the strategy, staring at spreadsheets, looking at numbers. But I felt like it wasn't really up to me or the other three people with me to define our purpose, our reason for existing, these big existential questions. So what we did is ask the editor-in-chief. And so she took about a year to write it, but about in 2017, wrote the long essay that I've taken a picture from here, which articulates the Guardian's mission. It was really important to do this. She, the editor, was still quite new in her post. She's only the 11th editor that the Guardian has had in our 199-year history. And it felt really important for her to talk about her vision for who we are, what we are, the role we play. Now, that was partly for everyone in the newsroom and the rest of the organization to hear from her. But it was really crucial, too, in helping us tell the story of the Guardian to the world at large and why the journalism we do really matters. So look, many companies in the world in many different sectors are now talking about their purpose and trying to really articulate that reason for their existence. And I think it's really important that we as news organizations take the time and effort to do that too. It sometimes might feel obvious to us. We work in newsrooms the whole time. It's not necessarily obvious to the rest of the world, particularly at a time when, as we know, trust in news organizations and lots of the media is crumbling generally. So if you have a good story to tell, think about that and think about how you try and tell it. Lesson 3. Okay, so we've answered the big existential question, why do we exist? Why do I come to work in the morning? I'm in the Guardian offices today. I'm one of a handful of people who are coming in despite the pandemic to try and keep working here. But how do you constantly keep communicating this to your audience? The editor had published an article, but hundreds of thousands of people may have read that, but how do you keep doing that on a daily basis? Well, what we did was develop a short message that we added at the bottom of many of our articles, which was really a new channel for us, and we nicknamed the message The Epic. It's called The Epic in The Guardian, this message that we've crafted. That message saw us directly ask readers for money, a voluntary contribution, based on the strength of our purpose. And just the important thing to understand here really is the extent to which we rigorously and relentlessly tested that message in a very kind of pure product way. And I think over just the last 3 years, we've tested, I think it's over 600 variants of that message and run endless kind of A/B tests and understood the efficacy of different variants. We found out that longer messages work better than short ones, somewhat surprisingly. We found that really specific appeals tended to work better than anything too generic, and so on. And now we flex and can change that messaging to respond to the news agenda essentially in real time. And lots of other organizations have copied doing this since, from The Independent in London to places like BuzzFeed. So this is just an example of other people who've appropriated this in The Guardian. And we're very pleased that other people have managed to learn this lesson from us already. I think it's proved really successful for lots of other news organizations too. Okay, lesson 4. Okay, this is kind of interesting. Like the title of this slide says, your brand matters. I think the brand matters more than ever in a relationship business model. And I think you really want to look after your brand wherever it appears. Look, lots of readers come to us directly to the Guardian website on a regular daily basis. We've got a really large number of regular people. But sure, lots of readers arrive via Google searching for something, or they come via Twitter, or they come via Facebook. Last year, one of our audience team in the newsroom, a close colleague of mine, saw a weird spike in traffic to a story that was 6 years old. It was a terrible story about a large number of Christians being killed in Pakistan. And Nick, could see that I think 51,000 page views had come almost entirely from Facebook, that the audience was mainly viewing the story on their mobile phones, that the audience was global and mostly new to us. They hadn't visited us before. We could tell that we weren't promoting the story ourselves using our analytics tool. And we could see that the story was likely driven by a series of very niche Facebook pages. We also can measure attention time on our stories, and we could see that many readers were spending just a couple of seconds on the story, which is actually 942 words long, right? You'd need to spend longer than that to read the thing properly. So it was clear to us and clear to that particular audience editor that whatever was happening wasn't about the journalism itself. This story was being used by a right-wing group to push a racist agenda, the idea that the media wasn't covering stories of Christians being persecuted around the world. So how do we feel about this at The Guardian? We're a sort of left-wing liberal news organisation. We felt pretty bad about it, that people were using our journalism in ways that we thought was irresponsible and taking it out of context and unfairly doing so. And already for years, we'd included our logo on the images that appear when readers share a Guardian story on social media, which was a response to data and research that shows that many people, as you know, are unaware of the source of the journalism they read. The day we saw that this particular story was being appropriated to suit someone else's malicious agenda, and I think it was the same day, a couple of engineers who now report to me found a way to add the year to the image on older news stories. So we could make it much harder to spin an old news story as a new outrage. And so that's what happens to every story we post to Twitter or Facebook now. And to me, that's actually a really great example of a pretty lo-fi way to actually really protect your brand, look after it in spaces where you can't necessarily just wrap your arms around it yourself. Okay, lesson 5. I hope you're still with me. Lesson 5 says, tell your own story. So beginning in 2015-16, readers started voluntarily giving us money in vast numbers. And unsurprisingly, we saw big spikes in contributions whenever something big happened in the news. The more readers you have around the world, there's a greater number who are likely to put their hand in their pocket and choose to support you. And the chart on the right shows that series of surges in financial contributions to The Guardian. I think if you squint, you can probably see the word Brexit there, and also something like the Australian bushfires. We have a really significant audience in Australia, and when we were writing about that story in a way that I think readers there really responded to in a kind of really Guardian empathetic way, we do a huge amount of environmental reporting, which we were linking to this. Readers responded by putting their hands in their pockets to support us financially. But the point about this is that as well as these big news events, well, you can see also here there's original Guardian reporting. To the left of that picture, I think you can see the words Cambridge Analytica. Now, that was a big Guardian story, read around the world. We hitched an appeal to readers to that story, an investment we made in investigative journalism, and that's an investment that paid off. And then I hope you can also just about see the words 1 million moment. This was the moment at which we passed 1 million paying supporters. And at the point at which we did so, what did we do? We celebrated that. We told the readers about it. And we brought them a message that said, you should support us too, because look what we can do if we work together, and if you give us your financial support, we can produce great journalism. So I think we've become really good at telling our own story. And the other image I think you can see on this picture is some artwork, some images that we're going to be using for a campaign that will be shortly running in the next couple of weeks, based on the strength of our environmental reporting around the world. And the final 6th lesson, look, there's thousands of lessons. I could talk about all of this stuff for days. But I suppose the point of this slide is just to say, look, anyone embarking down this path, you're going to make mistakes. We've made loads of mistakes. We did, as I said, we did the simple things first. We went for the low-hanging fruit. There was quite a lot of that for The Guardian. That was a great move. But it gets harder. It gets harder to find new readers, new prospective customers, new paying customers. I think one of the mistakes that we've made in the last couple of years, one of the things I worry about, is that we've created too many products. We've made it in a way too easy for people to give money to us. And I say this as our Chief Product Officer. You can give us a one-off financial contribution. You can give us a contribution on a recurring, ongoing basis. You can also, or alternatively, subscribe to the premium tier of our app, because we thought there was some value in that, and some people wanted something a bit more transactional. Or there's another tier, there's a more expensive digital subscription where we can bundle some things together. We give you another app as well. Now, listen, I would love it if anyone listening, whatever I said before, 250,000 people who read us last month in Argentina, anyone wants to make a contribution or take out a subscription, please do. I just worry sometimes that we made all of this a bit too confusing. And this screenshot shows us bombarding visitors to our homepage with a range of offers. We're using an advertising slot at the top to say subscribe to The Guardian Weekly, which is a weekly magazine that we publish. There's some messaging in the masthead saying support us, contribute or subscribe. And then there's a big advert down the bottom saying support The Guardian, which I think probably takes you to a contributions page. We've just overcomplicated this stuff a little bit. And we absolutely need, I think, to make it simpler. And it's a cliche now, really, but we really need to learn how we can become more customer-centric and really put the customer at the heart of everything in a reader relationship strategy. That sounds obvious, I know, but sometimes you forget about it. You definitely need to be an agile organization because of the mistakes you were going to make along the way. That's been really crucial to us. I could have given an entirely separate talk about journalists. I used to be a journalist working with commercial colleagues, working with product, people in cross-functional teams, the upsides and downsides with something like the OKR process that we pursue. There may be a chance to ask me any questions about that if you like. I can talk for days about it. Here, I guess I'm saying agility is crucial. Just never forget to remember some basic principles too. Or maybe sort of flip that a bit. I mean, I think it's not totally melodramatic to say that The Guardian would have been in real trouble if we hadn't made this switch to a reader relationship model 5 years ago. We still make a substantial amount of money from advertising, but if we didn't have these new revenues, well, we wouldn't be here. Even without the impact of the coronavirus on our business, which has been severe, I'm actually incredibly confident about our next 200 years because we've diversified our reader revenue base and because we've made that direct connection with readers. I think we are really clear about our principles and our values and our purpose. But thinking about the next 200 years, look, however old you grow, you can never stop learning. And we've got a huge amount to still keep going at here. And I'm sure I can learn from lots of you people listening today. And that's me. Thank you very much.
Caspar, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your learnings. I think that you have quite a lot. You mentioned 6, but I think that there should be more.
Yeah.
Of course. We are a little bit short of time, so I have a few questions to make that I'm going to make them in the next soft hub with you. So maybe we can keep the conversation there. So okay. Thank you very much again. Thank you very much for joining us. See you in a couple of minutes in the next space. Bueno, y seguimos acá cerrando cosas, metiéndole un poquito más. Nada, estamos la verdad que a tope. Nos gustaría pedirles a todos, si se copan, que prenda la cámara, el Zoom, y que salude, porque nos gustaría hacer una foto de ese tipo. Así que los invito a todos a ir prendiendo cámaras, a ir asomando las pantuflas, asomando el pijama y agitando la manito. Mientras eso va pasando, les quiero contar también acerca del Spatial Chat, un detallecito que ya lo mencioné, pero importante volverlo a recalcar. Va a haber un espacio para proponer actividades en el Spatial Chat. La idea es que a las 3 y a las 5 se conecten y que la busquen a Carola Fernández Moore, para que le propongan temas y básicamente disparemos conversaciones y que ella organice más o menos esas conversaciones para que todos tengan un espacio para hacer preguntas y hacer cosas. Veo que hay muchas cámaras prendidas, así que los invito a levantar la manito ahí a todos y vamos haciendo como la super foto grupal. Seguramente vamos a hacer algo parecido en el cierre de la mediaparty, como hicimos en la escalera tantas veces. Y bueno, nada, estamos cerrando esta primera parte que tiene que ver con Keynotes. Tuvimos 3 figuras espectaculares. La verdad es que estas cosas son las que tiene la mediaparty y las que todos aprovechamos y nos gustan. Voy a cerrar con esto. Acuérdense los talleres, acuérdense que hay mucho a la tarde, quedan 2 sofá house, hay cosas para hacer. Nada, les agradezco mucho a todos por haber participado en esta primera parte y le dejo a Gino la palabra para que continúe. Gracias.
Bueno, mil gracias, Gastón. Che, tuvo de todo esta mañana, este mediodía. La verdad es que tuvimos anuncios globales de Google News Initiative, tuvimos a The Guardian diciendo, che, bueno, las cosas no son tan fáciles como pensábamos, y estamos aprendiendo todavía de eso. Bueno, tuvimos a Greg, que ya estaba en la mediaparty, es realmente una persona maravillosa y súper generoso con sus aprendizajes y compartiéndolos, con lo cual... nada, una buena mañana de mediaparty. Sabemos que hubo algunos problemas con los slides, cosas de la pandemia y de las computadoras se cuelgan, las resoluciones son diferentes, acá hay una cantidad de equipos, no se imaginan, si entran a las redes de Hacks Hackers VA van a ver el backstage y van a ver que hay un montón de cosas dando vueltas que pueden fallar, pero bueno, les agradecemos un montonazo. Hacemos un breve resumen, vamos a tener workshops increíbles, ¿sí? Vamos a tener workshops sobre Svelte.js, que es un framework para hacer aplicaciones web bastante sencillas. Vamos a tener a la gente de Google enseñándonos a usar Earth Studio para hacer recorridos virtuales. Vamos a tener a la gente de Chequeado enseñándonos y mostrándonos cómo detectar contenido viral en WhatsApp y en redes. Vamos a tener un workshop sobre Data Science y sin código, como contaba Gastón también al principio. A César Soplín hablando de desarrollo de producto digital. A Jordan Wiersbrock, que está buenísimo, va a ser un taller de diseño de interfaces conversacionales para noticias, ¿sí? Digamos, no sé si se ve ahí, Gastón, vos ahí tenés un Google Home, ¿no? Lo veo ahí en el fondo.
Tengo un Google Home, acá me acompaña, sí, siempre, hace todo.
Bueno, la interacción y el consumo con las noticias y los medios a través de una interfaz que no es visual, digamos. Hay desafíos gigantes que se van a plantear ahí. Les agradecemos un montón, los esperamos en los workshops en un ratito. Los que tienen el honor y la suerte de haber entrado al Sofa Hub de Caspar, está empezando en minutos nomás. Los esperamos en el Special Chat, los esperamos en nuestras redes, y mañana nos vemos con un cierre increíble, pero todavía queda mucho más mediaparty. Muchas gracias a todos.